What happened in qualifying
for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the P1 podcast with Matt and Tommy. Abu Dhabi. Competitiveness, sessions, qualifying, done. We have seen DRS in qualifying for the final time. Goodbye. We will never see a rear wing open like that over a hot lap ever again. And Tom Bellingham, you were an absolute mess in the qualifying watch-along. Can only imagine what the race is going to be like when Max does Max things. How are we feeling? How do you sum up your emotions right now?
My emotions weren't... I did not remember that DRS thing at all. You'll be amazed to hear that my thoughts were elsewhere during qualifying.
Really? Wow.
And yes, if you joined us for the watch-along, my heart rate was at 130 BPM basically during Q3. And it was
actually 133, Tommy, which was even more interesting because it had 33 in it and it had the number 1. You know, whether that's Max going from number 1 to number 33 and it's just your pessimistic heart getting involved as well. But yes, it was a very, very fun one. And look, 3 drivers in the title fight, and it is set up rather interesting indeed. But before we get into the top drivers, let's begin with Q1, where the bottom 5 were Hamilton, Albon, Hulkenberg, Gasly, and Colapinto. So both our good surprises, not even Lewis Hamilton, but Alex Albon and Nico Hulkenberg, out in Q1. But of course, Lewis Hamilton is what we have to talk about first. He crashed in FP3. A very strange one. It felt like, at least from my perspective, that the DRS was closed very, very late going into that corner. But whatever the reason was, he lost the car, spun into the wall. But that's by the by. That's something else. We go to qualifying, and he is now the first ever Ferrari driver to be knocked out in Q1 in 3 consecutive occasions. And that's not even including, I think, the sprint quali as well. So... disaster for Lewis Hamilton. I feel like it's rinse and repeat every time we talk about his interviews after to quali, but he literally was saying hardly anything to Rachel Brooks. He then spoke to Sky Sports Italy, I think it was. I say spoke to, he basically just spoke about the amount of rage and anger that he had within him. Just pure and utter disappointment, whereas Charles Leclerc up in P5 further stamps the seal of worst season ever on the Lewis Hamilton 2025 campaign.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned about our good surprises. I also thought that Lewis Hamilton getting into Q3 would be a loophole in the predictions, and he's not even made it into Q2 again. It's an absolute shocker for Hamilton to crash in FP3, to then not make it out. Of course, it was incredibly close, like 1/10 away from George Russell in 8th is insane. We see this always at the end of the year, and even more when it's a regulation change, that the field spread is absolutely ludicrous how close it is. And yeah, Lewis Hamilton missing out by a small margin, but again, it's another headline that he doesn't want to have. And an absolute shocker for Hamilton. And, you know, you mentioned about the first Ferrari drive to do that. Of course, you know, it's going to take a miracle tomorrow for him to end the season with a podium, which, you know, you've said that at the start of the year. You thought you were insane to say that he hasn't scored a Grand Prix podium. And it's just been an absolute shocking year. And Hamilton just looks a broken man with his interviews.
He does indeed. Now, that statistic is for full seasons, by the way, before we dive into, well, actually, Ferrari substitute Giancarlo Fisichella. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah, exactly.
Lewis Hamilton, as a full-time Ferrari driver, it is, he's sadly making some very painful records at Ferrari. And, next year, the start of next year, is so unbelievably important. I cannot stress, even for someone as decorated as Lewis Hamilton, he has to kick off 2026 well, otherwise could well be a retirement at the end of 2026. It genuinely could. So other drivers we mentioned, of course, Alex Albon. I'm utterly devastated that he is out in Q1. I thought this might be the bounce-back weekend for Albon, but once again, the struggles. Williams not carrying over that same speed that we saw in Qatar. Hulkenberg, I mean, we're speaking about speed. Sauber looked utterly devastating over one lap. Gabby up in 7th, and Hulkenberg, a disaster, down in 18th.
Yeah, an absolute disaster. Hulkenberg qualified 4th here last year in a Haas. It's one of his best circuits.
You thought that was free real estate?
Exactly.
Really did.
I really thought it was going to be good. He's on an amazing run of form in qualifying, beating Gabby, but Gabby, a brilliant qualifying. We'll talk about him later. But disaster for Hulkenberg when big points are on the line, as we mentioned in the Friday podcast, that Sauber do have a chance to catapult themselves higher up the championship table, maybe 7th. But that's going to be a big ask now with Hulkenberg out the equation.
Yeah, it needed a double points finish, didn't it, for Sauber? And then Alpine, 19th and 20th. Why did I not go for them for another flop? It was just so free. And I just thought, no, they couldn't possibly be 19th and 20th. Of course, Franco Colapinto, the victor,
although,
in Grace's eyes.
Right, here's a theory.
Oh, no.
Was Grace absolutely cooking? Max Verstappen backs up the whole field. The Alpines win. 1-2. Max 3rd. She's got the clean sweep.
So when you say backs up the whole thing, I genuinely believe Max trying to go slowly is still faster than the Alpines. That's the problem.
Very true.
But we shall see if that comes true for Grace. That would be quite the three-pointer. But it would mean no Max Verstappen World Championship. Let's head to Q2, where the 5 drivers out in this session were Behrman, Sainz, Lawson, Antonelli and Stroll. The entire Q2 field from 1st to 15th were separated by 0.367 of a second. Ridiculous. Question from P1 Patreon member Captain of 3420. Your thoughts on a 44-year-old Alonso whitewashing Lance Stroll in Grand Prix qualifying this season? My thoughts are, wow. How has there not been one weekend? Because we do occasionally go, all right, Lance, I see you. 6 out of 10. But that doesn't happen all that often. And I don't know if it's a nod to Fernando Alonso. I think it's more on Lance Stroll, who has very, very rare occasions of turning up. And when he does, it's usually on a Sunday where he pulls off a little strategy masterclass, or he just does something reasonably well, but it doesn't happen all that often. The fact that he hasn't beaten a 44-year-old Alonso at least once in qualifying tells you all you need to know about Lance Stroll.
I think there's 2 sides to it. I've said many times, Alonso is a fantastic qualifier even at the age of 44. He's showing that. Look what Sebastian Vettel did against Lance Stroll. They were, I think, not too crazy apart when it came to the qualifying head-to-head.
I was going to say, you were saying, look what Vettel did with Stroll, but they were quite close at times.
No, that's what I'm trying to say in terms of praising Alonso. Look what it was. So you do have to give some credit to Alonso here. Yes, Stroll is absolutely awful, but for Alonso not to be qualifying, but for the fact that Alonso has done it, he's whitewashed a teammate again through the whole season in qualifying. I believe he did that when he was at Minardi as a rookie. With Van Dorn at McLaren, is the only driver to do it twice with a teammate through a whole season, and
3 times now. If you said it,
and it'd be 3 times. That's what I mean. Yeah. And now it's 3 times. So,
so he was the only driver before, and now he's
and now he's done it for a 3rd time. So Fernando Alonso, there is credit to Fernando Alonso, but it's also the fact that Lance Stroll, he's so much better in the race. He is such a bad qualifier. He is really poor. He's woeful.
Pole position in Turkey that time.
Yeah, exactly. In crazy conditions when it worked all out for him. But qualifying is where Lance Stroll is so poor, and that has been part of it. I also do wonder that, he's just waiting for Newey to join. And, well, he's joined, but in terms of have the Newey car, and he's kind of just uninterested, it seems, this season now, isn't he? So he's probably checked out long ago.
Well, he didn't turn up to the fan forum, Tommy, but neither did Fernando. And they didn't turn up to the dinner. What is going on at Aston Martin, Tommy? Why are they not turning up to anything? It's
maybe
very
they're
strange.
so focused on next year that they're having constant meetings.
Lance is leaving the track at 2 a.m. because he's so busy studying. Yeah, I doubt it, but it hasn't been confirmed either way. Other drivers to speak about: Ollie Behrman, 11th place. Sort of the first half of the season, you go, not a bad performance from Behrman. I'm now very upset that Ollie Behrman was 11th, 7 thousandths of a second behind Tsunoda, who was 10th, who was the closest I think anyone's ever come to exceeding track limits but didn't. From first glance, it looked like Yuki was out, but then when you sort of zoom in and you take a proper look, it's not very obvious where the white line ends and the other part of the track begins. So that was very, very close indeed. That would have, of course, promoted Ollie back into the Q3 spots. But considering the pace of Ollie Behrman, the praise he had for the team on Friday, and Ocon, of course, making it through to Q3, it has to be put down as a disappointment for Ollie.
A very big disappointment. He's looked absolutely incredible so far this weekend. He's been on an amazing run as well. He's looked so strong the last few races. Obviously unlucky last time out in Qatar. But then you go into this weekend, he's saying the car is absolutely unbelievable. He's driving so well. And, you know, when we do our little top 5 predictions just before qualifying, you put him in your top 5, little bit of interesting behind the scenes here, that I was going to go for exactly the same top 5 as Matt. And then I saw you write that, because I was going to go for Behrman top 5 as well. And then, of course, change it to be fun and a bit different. But Behrman was looking like a really good shot. We could have seen Ollie Behrman, based on what we've seen so far and how much quicker he's been to Esteban Ocon. Esteban Ocon has taken my flop personally and outqualified Behrman for the first time in a while.
You flopped him as well. Tommy has
I'm
left
throwing
the
predictions championship on the final round.
Left it ajar, but I haven't scored either because I didn't back Max for pole, did I? So I went for Oscar. Okay, interesting. So that was, very close indeed for Behrman, but sadly 11th for him. But I think he still has a great shout of scoring points tomorrow. Also, Antonelli, 14th for Kimi Antonelli. Of course, I haven't checked it, but I'm going to assume the same titanium dioxide would be banned in Abu Dhabi, and all of a sudden, form is out the window, back-to-back weeks without having the whatever it is, food preservative, and it's clearly taken its toll on Antonelli. I joke, but it has been a relatively poor weekend for Antonelli so far. Yeah,
very poor from Antonelli. He looked, not too bad. I did wonder how his form would be going into this race. I hoped that he wouldn't have maybe dealt with the pressure and everything he's gone through the last week with the kind of the way he found himself in that championship battle in terms of like making the mistake and letting Lando through and all the abuse that he got, which is just awful. But we have, I'm not blaming it on that because we have seen Antonelli have many poor qualifyings in the past and been one of these drivers that can't make it through to Q3. He's one of those drivers that I think he's had a good year all in all and had some really, really impressive performances and shown that on his day he can beat George Russell, which I think is an incredible thing to do in your first year when you're, how highly rated George is. But he doesn't have that consistency, and particularly in qualifying is where he's been let down more than a few occasions. And again, today. And another driver that, Max needs in fighting at the front. Exactly, and I'm sure Kimi would have loved to have helped. But 14th is going to be a struggle for Kimi to play any part in the championship. And it's insane that every single one of the drivers from 11th to 15th was a 23-0. That just shows how close of a qualifying this was, and surprised to not have had more scalps in Q1 and Q2, considering, of course, as well in Q1 we didn't mention that Lando was very cautious in that opening phase, half a second back on Oscar, and we were thinking, what's going on here? Is he feeling the pressure? But we will get on to Q3 very shortly. In fact, right now, Q3, the top 10. Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Gabriel Borsaletto, Esteban Ocon, Isaac Hadjar, and Yuki Tsunoda. Max Verstappen pole position. Tommy, we'll get into all the scenarios a little bit later, but let's start with a question from Sarp Stappen. I wonder who they support. Can Max really win it? The race, absolutely. And, weirdly, he's got to be favourite to win the race now, you'd think. Like, even me as a pessimist is saying that. McLaren are mighty. I thought it would be an easy McLaren pole position. I thought Lando was going to take it comfortably with everything we saw in practice. Max has put in an amazing performance, And you've got to think, Lando is not going to do anything too crazy, you wouldn't think. Max, obviously, can win the race. We've seen that pole position, get into turn 1 first. It's the best opportunity to win the race this year. We've seen it so many times. However, he needs more. And this is what we'll get into later of how he plays it. But he's given himself an amazing chance for what, one, yes, he can absolutely win the race. And two, even my percentage chance of winning the World Championship has gone up now. Like, he's got a great shot to do it because of where he's kind of put himself in this.
Oh, well, what's the percentage, Tommy? Like, don't hold back.
Drum roll, please. 10%.
10%?
Gone up quite a lot, yeah.
Wow.
And I take everything back about what I said about I'd rather Max be P2, because I think actually now I've seen this order, like, yeah, there's a lot of scenarios here, isn't there, that can pan out, which we'll talk about.
Hold it back, Tommy. We're not getting into scenario land just yet. For my answer to can Max really win it, the race, yes, but I feel as though, in a weird way, I think it will either be both or potentially neither, in the sense of, we will get into the scenarios, but Max could easily, well, I say could easily, he will have to play games if he wants to win the World Championship. It's as simple as that. And that will put his win under jeopardy. What we've seen, perhaps he doesn't play as many games as some of us might think. He's got the pace, at least over one lap. The question we had from Friday is, have Red Bull gone for, as much as, I don't think it's as extreme as go for pole or take the win, or have race pace to win, but have Red Bull gone for slightly more on the one lap pace to try and just get ahead of the McLarens? We're going to see what the race pace looks like. I think for McLaren, their race pace, especially with Lando, looked incredibly strong. So it is going to be close. I don't think Max will romp away and win this. One, because I don't think he has the car pace to do it, and two, he won't want to. Like, no. He will want to stay close to the McLarens and cause a little bit of jeopardy. So that's where I sit on it. But yes, Max can win the World Championship. I still think it's very unlikely, but he definitely can win the race. That is for sure. Question from P1 Patreon member, Clam is Magic. Did Red Bull play it wrongly for Yuki by playing the team game in quali? If Yuki could do Q3 normally and finish Q3 in P5 or P6, he would be better poised to play the team game in the main race, which would directly impact the title fight. No, they didn't play it wrong. Not at all. Red Bull had to put all their eggs in Max's basket to help him take pole. Simple as that. Whether it's half a tenth that he gained, doesn't matter. Of course, with hindsight, Max would have got pole regardless. But it was Yuki's fault. He had track limits on his last lap, was put down to P10. I don't know exactly where he would have finished after his lap, but I don't think it would have been P10. But it certainly wouldn't have been in the top 4. Like, he would have 8th or 9th, perhaps. So to start P10 versus P8, P9, but sacrifice a Max pole is not the way to go, in my opinion, if I was in charge of Red Bull. They played it right. Yuki sadly wasn't able to put in a lap at the end to make a big difference, but he didn't have the pace to really do that anyway. So P10 is not a disaster. He's not starting P20. And if Max genuinely somehow manages to back the pack up so much that we have 8 or 9 or 10 cars, it's like within 5 or 6. I don't know how it's going to play out, right? My brain's starting to go into dreamland and scenario land.
Scenario made.
But it's not a disaster for Yuki, but realistically, were we expecting him to play a role anyway? For me, no.
No, it's absolutely the right play from Red Bull. We went into qualifying thinking that McLaren were going to do it. They were the favourites to take pole position, Lando Norris pole. So they had to throw everything they could to try and get Max to get pole position and get the best qualifying lap he possibly could. And unfortunately for Yuki Tsunoda and just the second Red Bull car in general, no one in the last kind of like 2 years has shown that it's worth risking just doing anything else. Because as much as, say Yuki gets the best lap of his life and finishes 5th, he's not beating Lando Norris in the race. He's not shown anything. There's no disrespect to him, but it's true. Like, he's not going to be able to beat Lando in the race, is he? Let's be honest, in a normal circumstance. So it was the right play. You had to go for it. And Yuki Tsunoda, can he play his part later? If he stays out or does something crazy, I don't know. but they had to do this. Like P5, still be behind Lando. What really does that gain? And he's not going to be able to move forward and beat Lando.
Nah, P5 was never on anyway because Charles Leclerc popped in there. What a gorgeous, wonderful man. Question from Mr. Bear 15. How in the world did Russell manage to keep the car on the final turn?
With great car control, and he threw everything at it. George Russell is a very interesting driver because I don't know where I sit here with where he wants the championship. I do think he's very friendly with Lando, and obviously we know that he's had some beef, to say the least, with Max Verstappen in the past. However, his team, Mercedes, and his manager and boss, Toto Wolff, realistically wouldn't want McLaren to win the title because it doesn't look great on Mercedes. And George, I don't know where he plays on this. Like, there's other drivers up and down the grid who we know have favourites. We saw literally Fernando Alonso giving Max a tow in one of the sessions. George threw everything at it. He wanted to get pole position. It was a long shot, but he was asking about, I want a tow from Max because that's going to be my best opportunity, and he might give me one because he knows I need to be in the mix. George Russell is the puzzle piece in this whole championship fight, I think, here. And he threw everything at it at the final corner to try and do something crazy and make his way up the grid. But alas, he only managed to get fourth. There was a massive gap between basically the top three in the championship and the midfielders, which sadly for Ferrari is now them as well. But
all right, didn't need that. We're talking about George Russell. Why are we talking about Ferrari all of a sudden? Ridiculous. I know they haven't been able to help you just yet, mate. I'm sorry. But George Russell, phenomenal car control. I love that final corner. You just see drivers so urgently wanting to get onto the loud pedal, and you see these amazing drifts and slides and all kinds of stuff there. But it would have cost George a little bit of time. I can't for the life of me think it cost him 0.2 to potentially pip one or both McLarens. But he's fast enough to be a factor. I also don't know where I sit with George Russell and how he's going to play tomorrow. I think, should it be on the table, he'll go for the win. Absolutely. George Russell would love to get another victory to his name. Doesn't have that many. It's what happens in scenario land, which is the question here. Because, as you mentioned, he's had beef with Max. He's pretty friendly with Lando. But I don't think he would give up the position. Like, a lot of people do feel that George would just let Lando through. I don't think he wants that heat. We saw what happened with Kimi Antonelli.
He'd be the most,
literally in the last
he'd be the most
race in
hated
Qatar.
Driver in F1, and they don't need that. He doesn't need that going into the new season.
I think there are ways of disguising it with tyres have gone off, making a mistake, which George may well go down that route of. I don't know, but I just feel as though he just won't want to be part of it or be a headline no matter what it is, and he'll just want to race as hard as he can and go for the best result he can. But look, we will see how it plays out tomorrow. But I can't see it being as... him wanting to be as heavily involved in terms of letting someone through or helping them as some people may think.
Can I also say that, we had this conversation about, like, would your percentage chance be different had that Antonelli moment that happened in Qatar? Absolutely, because I've completely changed my mind right now, and particularly looking at this grid order, because I think the big thing that Lando has in his favour right now is, yes, George Russell. Looking at that grid order, I'm going to basically praise your boy here, but I think Charles Leclerc's done an unbelievable quali lap to be P5 and shouldn't be there at all.
Don't be afraid to,
No, I won't.
I
think he's one. I think he's absolutely one of the best drivers on the grid, hands down.
Keep going.
And but he's not going to have the pace in the race to be able to fight the top four. And unfortunately for Max, you've got Oscar Piastri who can just jump out of the way when he needs to. When if that scenario is happening.
Pretty easy to keep up though when Max is going a second a lap slower, isn't
well,
it?
this is the thing, and that's what it's gonna.
It's gonna be a 20-car DRS train.
Yeah, the whole championship for Max relies on 5th, 6th, and 7th here, And you'd argue that if you could have anyone in 5th, 6th and 7th, it would be Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso and Gabriel Bortoleto. So we'll find out how that goes. But
we will. Yeah. We almost went into scenario land there, Tommy.
Okay.
And we're just so excited to talk about it.
Oh, my God, I know.
This is we love title finales, we really do. So, of course, you've mentioned Charles Leclerc there as a great performance, P5. I think that is one of the best laps he's put together, genuinely. You look at Hamilton, who struggled to make it through. I think he's been able to extract almost everything out of that Ferrari, and thoroughly impressed that he managed to get P5. He changed the entire car from FP2 to FP3 and was able to make some steps forward. That's half a second off of pole around a lap that is hard to make time up. Is still a massive margin, but I am happy with it, and I'm glad I wore the Ferrari shirt, because I said it in the watch along. I was like, I am going to wear a Ferrari shirt for quali, because that's the only time there's any kind of hope. For the main race, no point whatsoever. Of course, Alonso P6, Bortoleto P7, Ocon a phenomenal job in P8, and Alonso as well. Yeah, P6, a great job from him with his teammate down in 15th. Right, let's do it. Let's chat about some scenarios for tomorrow, the top 3, and how it could all unfold. We'll try and not make it a 2-hour podcast, and maybe even run into when the race and the 5 lights come on.
True.
Because we could easily talk a very long time about this. But let's get into a question from P1 Patreon member Sky Sarah. Will Oscar be convinced to play the team game, or will he be aggressive into turn 1?
He has to be aggressive into turn 1. I think at the end of the day, his championship, of course, McLaren are within their right when the championship is not going to be won by Oscar Piastri, to say, okay, you need to let Lando through, and that's obviously the big advantage that he's got with this scenario at the moment, where he only needs to be on the podium. Whether it comes to that, of course, we'll find out. But Oscar, for his own race, will drive like he wants to win the title. I know he's like the forgotten guy and he's way out of it, but he absolutely needs to send it. He's on the clean side of the grid. He will want to beat Lando into turn 1 because he has to. And it's very easy, if you look on the other side of the garage, or if you're a McLaren or Lando fan, to be like, well, Oscar should just play it cautious, but he wants to win this world title and has every right to do it until that moment where it looks like it's going to be impossible. And that's when the team orders will be at play. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think McLaren are doing this, that they will basically say, no, you can't attack Lando in turn 1. I don't think that'll be the case.
I disagree. I think McLaren will say everything about not doing anything silly into turn 1 or lap 1 with
the
two teammates.
They'll say that, but whether he agrees or not.
Well, yeah, that's a different story, but I think McLaren will do everything they can to make sure neither of their drivers replicate what happened last year with Max and Oscar. There's two ways. There's 2 ways that Oscar can go with this. Both are viable. One, he's aggressive. He goes for it. He passes Lando. Then he hopes for some Max shenanigans that gives Oscar an opportunity to win, but also to somehow make Lando fall back further. That's one way of going about it. Probably the safer bet, because Oscar needs to put himself in with a chance of winning. The other one is he sits in P3 and watches Max versus Lando unfold before his very eyes, because that is also an opportunity. If Max does something with very large elbows that causes the two to come together, there's a little bit of damage, all of a sudden Oscar's in the pound seats if Max and Lando start falling back.
But Lando won't. I guess I was going to say Lando won't fight Max, will he? But I guess
Lando will have to if Max is going
2 seconds slower than everyone else.
It will be pass or be passed.
Yeah, true.
In terms of Lando, so I saw a lot of talk in the broadcast about Lando's in a great position. On paper, he is right. He's in championship winning position. Second is better than 17th. But it also is a very difficult position to manage. I don't think there's any position other than him on pole that is a good position for him, because of what we're talking about here with the scenarios and us being Formula One fans and getting very excitable about the possibility of anything and everything happening. But I do think that both of those sort of scenarios in Oscar's head is very viable. I think he's more likely to go aggressive, but it's also fine to see what Max will the levels that Max will be willing to go to, because otherwise, if Oscar takes Lando into turn one, Oscar's the one that has to deal with whatever Max is going to try and potentially do in the opening stages and for most of the race. So we shall see. Next question, P1 Patreon member Sam Krebin. Is it worth Lando being cautious on the first lap with Max knowing his aggression into turn one? And I guess just generally Lando being cautious on Max. If I'm Lando, my safest bet is to pass Max and win the race. If we're being actually honest here, we've seen what 2016 can bring. Yes, Nico Rosberg still won the world title there when Lewis Hamilton tried to hold him up in the last laps. But Lando's best bet, in a weird way, when you think surely he can just be cautious and finish on the podium, is to pass Max. If he gets a fantastic opportunity with DRS and can just outbrake him or breeze past him, you've got DRS down the main straight, then you've got DRS after that left-right as well, into turn 6, I think it is. There are opportunities to overtake. It's not as if we are looking at Qatar or things like that where there aren't opportunities. There definitely are. So, yes, I think genuinely, if Lando wants to have a chill race, he needs to pass Max. Max, I know we say about these things that he's going to play shenanigans, he's going to do this and that. Yes, but he's not going to be insane with it. He can't be. I know that he doesn't.
He's not going to start driving around backwards and.
Yeah, he's not going to do something so insane that you go, wow. Clip this up. That you go, wow, can't believe you've done that, Max. But if Max does start playing games like that, Lando has the car to be able to overtake Max. So that's what I think. Pass him and win the race.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways Lando can play it here. If he gets the start of his life and basically just passes into turn one, it's all but done, really, I think, unless Max goes for an absolute dive bomb. But if he can basically get into the lead and pull away, like, obviously, he's in dreamland, he can be cautious. I think the thing here is he can be cautious in terms of he doesn't need... He knows that he can be on the podium and he'll have that situation where Oscar Piastri can just let him go. So realistically, as long as he doesn't get beaten by Leclerc, Alonso, Bortoleto, in my opinion, he's fine. And they're... It doesn't matter though, does it? Because... No,
it does. If Oscar and George both beat him,
Oscar's not going to beat him because Oscar can let him through.
But Oscar might be trying to win the race and say screw
but he
you.
Won't, but he won't, will he? Because it's
true.
Yeah. So this is the situation here that he just needs to avoid getting beaten by
down the inside. That's what Tommy's going to be dreaming of tonight.
You say that, but yeah, I think, of course, it sounds easy. I'm saying it like, oh, it's easy and it's done. The nerves are going to be so high. It's going to be one situation, thing I thought about in terms of just the nerves and the tension, because we've not seen it in so long because we've not had a championship fight. They did it last year with the constructors. They did it in 2021. They're going to have to stand on the grid and they're going to put them next to the World Championship trophy, all next to each other, looking at that trophy. I'd love to see a heart rate monitor on the three of them at that point, because it'd probably be higher than mine during Q3, because that is going to be so nerve-wracking for them. And Lando...
Max will be 50 BPM, I don't know what you're on about.
Yeah, true.
Lando, it might be
but
different.
for Lando and Oscar, it could be massive because it is an amazing opportunity for them. Yeah, Lando just needs to make sure that he isn't too cautious that he falls into the trap of being caught by Leclerc, Alonso, Bortoleto, because realistically, as long as he stays ahead of them, he'll be fine. And as I'm saying this, 3% max championship fight.
For God's sake, you are unbearable. Oh, dearie me. Okay, question from Fergie's Right Ref. Based on this grid, give us 3 strategies that Max can use to win the title.
Drive at 3 miles an hour and basically back everyone up. Hope that somehow Yuki Tsunoda gets into the lead. And then Yuki Tsunoda can then basically play his part, let Max through, and then Lando is pushed off the podium.
You best believe that Yuki Tsunoda starts on hard tyres, by the way, tomorrow.
Yeah,
that is
100%.
1,000%.
Yeah, he'll do that. The other strategy is the fact that I can't think of three. He has to back the whole field up. That's the only way. And surely, and I think it's more just how Max backs the fields up. Because Lewis Hamilton basically only did it right at the end when he knew that was the situation. Does Max do it from lap 3, lap 4? Like, how does he play it? Because he can't afford to be too ridiculous that he gets undercut by the whole field and stuff. But he also has to, try something and will try something. 3 scenarios is a lot. The only scenario I see is that he has to back the field up and put a certain Charles Leclerc into play or Fernando Alonso, and I just don't think they've got the pace to be able to do that. So we'll see.
Yeah, it is unlikely. I don't think there's 3 strategies, sadly. That's coming from Tommy, a Max fan, who has, I'm sure, thought of every possible thing that could happen. But it has to be that. It has to be slow. The other things just rely on reliability or somehow McLaren fumbling the strategy, which I don't think it would be possible if we do get a one-stop strategy, which you'd imagine would be likely, considering what we've seen in this 2025 season. Max just needs to win the race and be hopeful that something crazy happens, and he will do what he can to maybe start some of that chaos if he possibly can. So there you go. That is our scenarios. That is how we are set up tomorrow for the championship finale. If you're watching along with us, we're live on YouTube and Twitch. We'll be live an hour before the race start. So if that's in the UK, it's 12. But yeah, an hour from whenever you are watching the lights going out. We'd love to have you there to celebrate the end of this 2025 season, which has created us some serious spice in the championship. Tommy, what are your final thoughts for the final qualifying of the year?
I don't know, because I don't know how I'm going to compose myself during the watch along. It's going to be amazing, though. I can't wait for it.
You've had an entire year to sort of think
about. I haven't had an entire year.
No, to improve your final thoughts. Your final thoughts on the spot, and you said, I don't know.
Well, look, when we'll see how you're dealing with it when Leclerc's in the title, if we ever get there.
Bro, we're very different people. I will have 1,000 words to say about Charles Leclerc if he's in the title fight next year. Right, thank you, everybody. We will see you very soon. Looking forward to tomorrow very much indeed, and we'll see you there. Bye!